Welcome into Table Talk. I'm Brian Kell. Karen Wilson is, as we like to say from time to time, on assignment. If you see her out and about and you ask her what that means, I really don't know. But we've got a very special Table Talk here for you today as we are joined by Representative Cameron Sexton. He is the District 25 representative encompassing Cumberland, Van Buren, and Putnam counties, and we welcome him to this table for the very first time. Representative Sexton, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we need to also say that you're not the only one in the studio here today, as we've had a group of young men and women that have come down to visit Channel 6, and it just so happened to be on the day that we're taping this. So it is also our first in-studio audience, and so it's the Van Buren County FBLA boys and girls that are down here, and so we welcome them down here as well, and it seems to be a pretty good little group.
It's a good group, it is.
Absolutely. So again, welcome you being here for the first time, and I thought we'd take a moment just to find out a little bit more about Representative Cameron Sexton. Maybe lose the representative part and just tell us about Cameron Sexton.
Well, people call me Cameron, so that works. You know, I moved to Cumberland County about 2 decades ago, 20 years ago. I have a son who's at University of Tennessee. He's a freshman there. I have another daughter. I'm learning how to drive at 16, which is interesting. Yeah. And then I have a three and a half year old daughter. Oh, and so I've lived in Crossville. I got to Crossville by working with Congressman Van Hillary back in the day. He represented parts of Warren County. I was on his staff. And I've worked in healthcare, and I'm in banking now before I started running for office.
Okay. Well, we just had another it seems like Van Hillary had such a big impact on people that worked in and around him to carry on those talents onto politics. Senator Janice Bowling also had a working relationship with him. Tell us about what you gained from working for.
Right. You know, well, Van's district at the time, the 4th district, was like the state of Tennessee almost, the way it was designed. But Janice and I were on the same staff, and there's other people who've gone to do other things on that staff. But I mean, there's a lot of good things that Van instilled in us, and a lot of it had to do with constituent services. And he represented a district at that time that was more Democrat than Republican. He was Republican. But what he always said is when someone calls and they need help, you never ask them how they voted. You don't ask them if they're an R or D. If they need help, you try to do your best to solve their problem or have someone reach out to solve it for them.
Yeah. As far as, take us through, so banking has kind of been your background, I guess, before, and even really through politics. Tell us about the experience of what it was with you that, first of all, I guess made you get involved with Van Hillary's campaign and then say, I want to run for elected office, because we should mention real quick, you're in the midst of your 4th term.
Right. Well, I got involved whenever I was graduating college, and so I worked on, at the time he wasn't lieutenant governor, but Randy McNally's Senate campaign. I was on his staff for that. And what I saw is it's a lot like sports. I played sports, and it's a lot of competition. It's very intriguing if you get into it. And but then what it does is it incorporates other things. You have to be part advertising, part marketing, part wordsmith, part this, part meet people. You know, so what it does is it really makes you focus on a wider range of skills, especially as you're coming out of college. And I was transitioned to a couple other different things to get there. But what I will say in the end is what made me run for state representative 7 years ago was we had someone, and he was part of the party I was in, but he wasn't listening to the constituents. And the constituents were trying to have him go to a certain thing, and he refused and went and did his own thing. And at that point, when you lose focus and you put your it wasn't even a strong moral belief or any issue like that, but when you don't listen to your constituents and your elected officials on what they want you to do back home, then that starts having a problem.
It seems like I've said this of every representative, legislator that has come on Table Talk here with us, but you have a very beautiful and very special area that you cover. And we mentioned just on the outset, I mean, Van Buren, Cumberland County, Putnam County. Talk about just being able to represent this beautiful, scenic
Mm-hmm.
and the type of people that you get to.
Right, it is a great area. They're all unique, and everybody has their own issues that they're trying to work around. But we have two beautiful state parks in the district, Cumberland Mountain and Fall Creek Falls. A lot of work going on at Fall Creek Falls, and there's been some issues around that. I'm sure that our audience here today is aware of them, but most of them have been worked out. But the district's wonderful. There's a lot of outdoorism, I guess you could say. There's a lot of kayaking, because the other thing that people overlook is we have a lot of rivers and creeks that people from all over the state and outside the state come up to the plateau to do kayaking and canoeing and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunities in our area for jobs and recreational activities and tourism, and hopefully we can continue on with that.
I know in talking with you before we came on air that nonprofits are pretty important to you too. You've taken a lot of initiative on getting involved with them. Talk about just some that are near and dear to your heart that you've worked with.
Well, working at the bank, we're involved a lot in our community. I work for the Bank of Putnam County, which we don't have a branch in Warren County, but we're in other counties in the area. And so we work with a lot of nonprofits. I'm on the health committee, so I work a lot with the assisted living and the skilled nursing areas as well. But I'm a member of the Noon Rotary Club in Clawsville, the Lions Club. I've been on the board for Good Samaritan Society and some other entities throughout, trying to make sure that we can have our community get to the point where we really want it to thrive.
Yeah, and just you mentioned as far as the state parks, just so both are in your area are very near and dear to me. I mean, it seemed like every summer from the age of 5 to 15, I was at Cumberland Mountain State Park, and then obviously, like you mentioned, as far as Fall Creek Falls and all that's going on with them, and just how beautiful these areas are, and the tourism that comes in from these areas, very key to these.
Well,
areas.
it is. Fall Creek Falls, for example, they have 1.6 million visitors, and we've done a lot of work upgrading the pool and the cabana areas. We've also done a lot on the cabins and upgraded the cabins, which are running about 80-90% occupancy rate. The campgrounds are just as good. We had to do a lot of upgrades on the outlets to make sure they can hold the big campers now, because the electricity kept breaking, the circuits kept breaking. And the last piece of that is the new inn that's being proposed. And so once all those pieces come in place, what we hope is that 1.6 million people, more and more, will be able to stay and spend the night and spend their money locally than being a transient in and out in one day type of activity.
Getting back to you being in the midst of your 4th term and getting into politics and representation of areas, talk about what you've learned over these last 4 elections and the people in your constituency. What's been the biggest things that you've walked away with?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, I love the election. Some people say that every 2 years is a tough re-election, but you can really see the votes. So if you're voting on something tough in the House, you'll see us be a little bit more deliberate, because you can't just say, I won't be up for another 3 years, and you can make an easier vote. Every vote makes it more tough when you're always constant having to face re-election, which I think is a good thing. The other thing is almost, in the House, we can propose 15 bills a year is what we have. And I would say probably half of my bills come from me going out and meeting with people. And people who think that the ideas come from me or some association or some lobbyist, that's not the case. A lot of times it comes from local people who have an issue or have an idea, and you take a look at it and you try to see how you can make that work.
And I guess in talking with your fellow ladies and gentlemen in the houses, that like you said, the day in, day out of this job is your office being able to help the people in your area and being that resource for them. Talk about what that means to be able to be.
Well, I mean, it is, and you can see the longer that you're there, the more busier you become. And what I mean is your first 2 years there, you're trying to learn the processes and how the committee works, how the bill works, and gaining your ground, so you're not as busy. The more you're there, you either go into a leadership role or to the committee roles. You carry more complex legislation than what you probably did your first 2 years. But the other thing is what you realize is you're busy year round. We may be only there 3 or 4 months, and the state salary for an elected official in the House or the Senate is like $21,000 a year. But I probably still go down to Nashville 2 or 3 days a month. I don't overnight when we're out of session. But the required amount of work to continue that on is very different. Is very different than it was the first 2 years. And what I will tell you too is there's a difference between rural and urban legislators. In the cities, if you're in Nashville or Memphis, they probably don't know who their state representatives are, state senators. They're more local oriented. When you get to the rural area, we get a lot of calls, federal and local calls coming to the state office, and then as well as some state issue calls. And it seems like we're more the point person in our communities to try to go in the right place when people call.
I don't think we brought this up on any of the other interviews that we've done with your fellow representatives, but especially for our in-studio audience of young people that are here, but the folks out there as well, this is not something you mentioned. Roughly about $21,000 is what a representative makes. You're not doing this for the money, that's for sure. So it's got to you've got to have that kind of passion, I would assume, to be able to say I'm willing to do this and be able to basically try to do my job, whatever that is, and also do this as well.
Well, the thing is, the biggest impact that anybody can have is a lot of times on the local level. So that's where you can make the biggest difference. The next is the state level, and then finally is the federal level. Federal level is very hard to make any kind of difference unless you have enough money or enough stature to get into enough into a committee role or in leadership or something. But if you're truly looking to make a big impact, it's the local or state governments where you really want to go.
We always hear politics is local, and sure enough, that's it. Was it safe to say that when you ran for this office, that did you have any kind of city or county political experience, or just get straight into this?
No, I ran for city mayor back in the day, and I lost by, I think it was 32 votes at the end of the day. So if 17 people would change their votes, I would have won by 2. But and that's sometimes how close it is. Yeah. But the thing is, when I ran for city mayor, I wasn't from Crossville. I've only been there for a decade at that point, and so I was still getting over the hump of people knowing who I am. But I like it. I enjoy it.
So having run for that office, what did you take away from that run of coming up just short? What was the biggest thing you
Well, it's kind of like in a basketball game. I coach my son's middle school team, and it's like after every game, you're like, okay, what could I have done different to change 6 or 8 points? You had 3 possessions you threw away. So even at that point, you're like, okay, what could I have done? Could I have done this a little different or changed this issue? But I kind of do things different than what most campaigns, what you'll see, what I've taken away from that, to answer your question, is most campaigns or most elected officials will only run for re-election 4 months before they run. So if you're running for local office, they'll start running in January, and the state offices, they'll start running about May. I don't ever stop advertising constantly on the radio. I'm always in the newspaper. I'm always doing this. So if you see elected officials who have a lot of money in their campaign account, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you'll never see that, because I view it as a continuing basis. And so I'm always trying to make sure that they know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and keeping those issues in the front.
Good deal. We're going to take a quick break here on Table Talk, and we've talked a lot about Cameron Sexton, the man, and now we're going to talk about Cameron Sexton, the representative, and what's facing this area and the state in 2018. Back with more on Table Talk right after this.